I don't like the way I'm feeling. Maybe I need to change the things I'm thinking.
Ugh,
So if
I
we go
love
back
that.
to what I was just saying, when we can tap into the things we're thinking when we're successful, chances are when we're not feeling successful, when we're feeling up against an obstacle, we're thinking things that are not success thoughts. So tap into those success thoughts that you had when you're in a place of trying to overcome a mountain or achieve something. That's how come I want you to have the success
Yeah.
journal.
Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to episode number 268 of the Game On Girlfriend podcast. Have you ever said, I really want this thing, but might look something like this? I really want to get healthy and strong, but I'm not getting up at 5 a.m. You know what I'm talking about? Like you're in the middle of a goal, you're in the middle of a new project, you're in the middle of something that is going to cause change for you. And all of a sudden, there's a big but. And yes, I made that joke, right? Like it happens to all of us. And if you have been struggling with making change, if you know there's something you really want, but something keeps coming up, this is the podcast episode for you. I am so excited for you to listen in on my conversation with Meg Rentschler. She is a highly qualified executive coach. She was an incredible therapist for years and years, and her entire journey that she's on now started when she was 13 years old, even though she didn't know it then. So, in the midst of your desire to change, looking for something new to do, trying to find your life's purpose, which you know is not a term I love. If you're finding yourself stuck in this chain, you are going to love Meg's story and you're going to love what she's doing now and how she's helping people deal with the ambivalence monster, which will inevitably rear its head when you're trying to change. Meg Rentschler loves helping other people live their best lives. And after 20 years as a psychotherapist, she transitioned into executive coaching in 2008 to help create healthy workplaces where people can actually thrive. Meg believes in the power of coaching and its ability to break down barriers and create connection. To that end, she's trained and mentored over 2,000 coaches so they can bring their impact into the world. And she's worked with hundreds of leaders to use coaching in their leadership style and to empower and grow their teams. And you'll find out in today's episode, she also uses that to help them become better parents. Meg's weekly podcast, The Star Coach Show, has been providing strategies, tools, and resources for coaches and leaders for the past 8 years. And yours truly has appeared on that show as well. We will make sure there's a link underneath this video or in the show notes so you can enjoy that. This is going to be an episode that you'll come back to remember what you're capable of the next time you're in the midst of big change and you're not sure you're going to see it through. Pop in those earphones and let's get to it. Meg, oh my gosh, I'm like bursting with excitement. Welcome to the Game On Girlfriend podcast. I'm so happy to have you here today.
I'm just right there. Game on, girlfriend. Who wouldn't want to be on this podcast? And then add the fabulous Sarah on top of that. Just
I mean,
knock me out. My day is done. I
I
am like so excited.
oh, I love us. We just have such a vibe going. And you guys, I hope you catch me on Meg's podcast too. You guys, we'll put a link to that in the show notes or underneath this video if you're watching on YouTube. We like each other a lot. And
And she was fabulous, by the way. Just, I mean, you've got to catch that show because you've got to.
fun. Oh my gosh, we had so much fun. And we're going to do it again here, except this time the spotlight gets to be on you, which I'm thrilled about. I'm so excited to do this. And so before we spotlight you, you know, like the FBI interrogations. No, I'm just kidding. Before we spotlight you, let's share with the audience because you are uber talented. You have done a lot. You've reinvented yourself. You've gone through pathways. You've done amazing things with your life. And you've landed on something that I think is actually really important for people to hear. But for you, Meg, out of all the things on planet Earth that Meg could have done with her life, why is this what you choose to do with your life now?
So just right there, goosebumps for the question. The
Oh,
question is so awesome because I think it is so key to anybody listening or any, not necessarily my story into, but like, how do we tune into the thing that lights us up? How do we tune into that thing that makes us jump out of bed in the morning? Okay, totally. I don't always jump out of bed in the morning, but in general, that motivates us towards what we do. So
Yeah.
if I can kind of go to my first life, which was as a psychotherapist, the concept of working with people
Mm,
to overcome their obstacles, to kind of heal from whatever trauma or adversity was in front of them,
mm,
was a key element for me. As a 13-year-old, I was reading a newspaper in Detroit, Michigan, where I grew up in the Detroit area, and there was like a Sunday insert in the paper called Parade magazine. And there was a special series on runaway children.
oh my
And
gosh.
I just was oh, I felt it in the heart that these children had to leave their home, and that so often it was because of abuse or because
Mhm.
of, I mean, that these kids weren't choosing to like live on the streets and be
Right.
treated like criminals. And then I thought right then and there, I'm going to work with these kids. I'm going to work with these kids. So I went on and got my master's of social work, and I worked in downtown Detroit for several years in critical care, crisis care, would go to the hospital emergency rooms in the middle of the night to see kids who were running away, whatever. And that was amazing. And then we got transferred to Dallas, and we moved to Texas, and worked in a psychiatric hospital for adolescents. And then I went into private practice as a therapist. So
Okay.
that's sort of kind of like what was my initial threads. And then I was a private practice psychotherapist for many years, like 20 years. Then, Sarah, what I began to see was that over time, was like a family therapist and then a marriage
Yeah.
therapist, and then started seeing a lot of adults in
Okay.
my therapy practice, because very truthfully, often it's the adults that need to be healthier to help
Sure.
kids be healthier.
Yeah,
So,
that's the correct
long
order
story
of
short,
things. Yes.
yeah, I
Yeah.
began to see that so many of the people that were coming to see me for therapy were working in really dysfunctional work environments. They
Mm,
were being asked to lead without being given leadership skills.
yeah.
They were being led by people who were great individual contributors, but then made to be a leader and had no earthly idea how to lead. So, what was happening was that there was all this unraveling of people because they were working in these incredibly unhealthy work environments.
Mm,
And I worked with employee assistance programs across the DFW area. I just thought, there's something wrong with this. So, when we think about what lights us up, if
mm.
we start to feel like the energy drain is not matching the energy input from what you do, you got to assess what's going on with me, because can I
Mm.
really be the best I can be in this environment if my drain is bigger than my input?
Oh,
And so I thought, what could I do differently? What could I do differently that still meets this need that I have to help
mm.
people be their best, but from a different angle?
Oh
That's
my
when I
god.
discovered executive coaching. And I thought, if I could go into organizations and help their leaders know how to lead, because I truly believe that people have that positive intent, but
Mhm.
they don't know. And they're
Right.
being gobbed on with expectations. So what do? They like go to knee jerk reaction. And what am I going to do to just kind of, so I'm going to just try to do everything. I'm going to tell people what to do. And then they're not feeling fulfilled. The people they're leading aren't. And I thought, maybe that's the thing.
Mm,
So I can tell you that I went to my coach certification program in like 2007, 2008. And whew, that influx of energy, like, this is what I meant to do. And so I've been doing that now
mm.
since 2008, 2009. Then this other thing happened. You never, like, who knows? Like, knock, knock, knock. Like, I was
So
like,
true.
this was not on my radar.
Yeah.
So as I was getting ready to end my coach certification program, the director called me and said, let's have coffee. And I thought, oh, what trouble am I in? Because I tend to go towards that. too. Anyway, he said, when you're done, you're going to be done in March. I'd like you to create a cognitive coaching module and join our faculty.
Oh my gosh. Talk
Yeah.
about a lineup. Wow. Just right there.
So then I did that. He said, with what you've been doing, you've been solution focused in your coaching, which is very aligned with solution focused in your therapy, which is very aligned with coaching. So I joined the faculty of the coaching school, which was not what because my vision, I'm going to create healthy working environments, one leader at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then this opportunity opens. I can help other coaches bring their coaching into the world, the ripple effect.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm an executive coach. And yes, I go into organizations and it lights me up to help them
Mm-hmm.
talk to their people in a way that empowers them, help people deal with things like ambivalence and motivation
Yeah.
and change management, all these things. But also, I get to work with over 100 coaches a year to help them bring their best forward and
Love it.
then create all this change in the world. So I don't know if I answered your question because I know I went but I hope that's why I do what I do. And I got to tell you, it if I hadn't paid attention to the energy drain and
Yeah.
stayed as a therapist, I think I might have been able to align and do different things, but I just think we need to pay attention when life is telling us what you're doing was a great fit even last year, but maybe it's not a great fit
That's
this
right.
year.
Yeah.
And then I paid attention to that. It wasn't like the minute I felt that I was like, I'm throwing this out of the, but it was like, what could I do? What could I shift
Mm-hmm.
that better fuels this? Because when my heart's fueled, I can give more to others.
Yes. There's no question about that. And I really love what you're pointing to about listening, paying attention to it. And I think I really love what you said there at the end. Like, I didn't just throw it out and then start over. Because I think sometimes in the self help world, right, in the
Hmm.
anyone can be an entrepreneur world that I live in, right? It's like,
Right.
just do it right now, throw everything out. Don't you burn all the boats, don't give yourself a way out. And I think sometimes that can be so damaging because the outflow, like you were saying, like your output is so high when you're shifting and changing that if you don't
Right.
have a solid foundation, you can really mess yourself up, like emotionally, mentally. You're
Right.
just like,
Well, and then you're
ah,
operating out of scarcity too.
yeah,
Who's attracted to scarcity? I've yet to find very many who are like, ooh, I want to work with that person who's
right.
afraid all the time, living out of scarcity, unable to breathe because they've completely, it's that black and, either the living in the extreme zones doesn't
Hmm.
tend to work well for any of us.
None of
We
us.
do kind of
Yeah.
want to, you can occasionally live in because it's kind of exciting in the fast lane, but you got to find sort of the place where you're really in sync.
And seems like you've done that really well. Let me ask you a question. She did not know
No.
I was going to ask her this. Just so everybody listening and watching knows. I'm about to like this just came to Sarah Walton. What are the signs for you? How did you notice that what was okay even last year wasn't okay anymore? What were you feeling? What were you sensing? How did you pick
Ooh,
up on that? Because I think for everybody it might be a
great
little different, but
question.
we might help a few
Hmm.
people who are noticing it and not knowing what it is.
So good. So I think we need to pay attention to, are we looking forward to going to work or dreading going to
Mm,
work?
mm,
Is everybody on our calendar sort of a stomachache client, where you're like,
ah,
oh, I've got this for
yeah.
tummy? Or is it something that you're excited to like engage with and be a part of? Even things like, because I was in a therapy practice with three other women who I adore. But even things like we need to make decisions about this for the practice or that for the practice, I was like, I don't want to. I don't want to pay attention to those things. Or I don't, everything felt like a heavy lift
Mm,
instead of something that, you do to forward things or to engage in things. So I I think that I needed to pay attention to the fact that there was not that natural. I tend to be pretty positive, pretty, high energy, but it was beginning to be a slug. It was beginning to
mm.
be more of a lift. Now, luckily, because I think ethically, I was able to meet my clients and engage with them. I don't feel like any of the therapy clients that I saw during that time were not being given the benefit of a engaged therapist. But I needed to pay attention to the fact that I wasn't looking as forward to it, or like,
Mhm.
normally, if you're in private practice, when you get a new referral, you're excited that you get a new
Right,
referral.
right. You're like,
You know,
"Yay."
it's like, yeah, the calendar's gonna stay filled, and it was like, "Oh, I've got a new client." I mean, so I think those are
Little
the kinds of
things.
things you need. Yeah, you need to pay
Mhm.
attention to those little energy shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. And I absolutely get what you're saying. And I think we have a lot of humans out there with massive integrity, right? And even when it's like,
Right,
oh, dear God, if I have to do this job one more day, but then they get there, they hit their deadlines, they do what they said they were going to do, right?
right,
And there is that, I think anybody who's going to be attracted to this conversation or to what we're saying is going to be somebody who absolutely gets what you just said, that there's things that start to go off and the integrity in the actual work is 100% still there. And that can
right,
be confusing, I think, too, right? Like you give a
right,
client everything you've got, or if it's still a day job, whatever it is that you give it everything you got, and then you're like confused because you hate it the next, you're like, I don't want to go back
right,
in. And it can
right.
feel kind of discombobulating like that. But I think
Yes.
it's important to talk about it because there's nothing wrong when that's happening. It just might be a little bit of a nudge to start looking at other opportunities out there. I really appreciate you saying that. And it kind of leads me into one of your I want to say expertise, areas of expertise inside this whole world. And that is sort of understanding intrinsic motivation versus those things that are a little bit more external. Like, how do we find the sweet spot there?
Right. And I think part of it is being tuned into, am I intrinsically excited and motivated about this thing? Or am I doing it strictly for somebody else or some other motivation? And and I totally get that. Sometimes we got to do things because our boss says we have a deadline that we
Right.
got to hit. I mean, totally get that there are both. However, if all our motivation is coming externally, and we're not tapping into anything about what lights us up or what makes this important to us, or what, even kind of being the best we can be in this particular, the sort of the energy that comes from doing a good job, or
Mhm.
giving our attention and focus to something. There's got to be some level of internal drive and a motivation to really make things be meaningful and worthwhile. Because if we're only doing things to get a paycheck, or to make somebody else happy, or because our parents want us to do it, or because our boyfriend wants us to look a
Mm.
particular way, or because, like, if it's
Yeah.
all because of outside forces, then it's not going to be driven from the same fuel.
Mm.
And yes, there's probably about, is it, does it, are we, do we never, we should never do things because other people, well, of course we want to, live in harmony, and we want to do a good job in our job, and so definitely. But what is, what are the things that make it important to us?
Mm.
And what are the things that, maybe we like, I've worked with many a client who say to me, "My day job isn't really what, it doesn't give me a sense of purpose, a
Mhm.
sense of life purpose, but I need to do it because I need to put food on the table, and I need."
Right.
So some of the things that we might work on is, what is that thing that drives you and motivates you, that maybe you do on the weekends, or on the,
Mhm.
so volunteer work, or, many of the coaches that I work with have a job still, but they are building
Got it.
this coaching thing on the evenings or weekends because it lights them up, because it
Mhm.
gives them that sense. So I would say that, you know in order to be an engaged human being, yes, we're going to have those external locuses of control, but what do we have inside that lights us up and motivates us,
Mm.
that sort of creates a fullness of life?
I really appreciate that. I always find that when somebody really loves the actual work they're doing,
Hmm.
that the money starts to increase.
Yes.
But that being said, for those who are entrepreneurs, I feel like there is also a leap of faith. Is there an actual, can I really do this? There's like that question of like, Like even the coaches I bet you're working with are like, can I really do this for my day job? Could
Oh,
this really ever, are you sure? Right. And I remember feeling that way in my corporate job, right? I'd have people lined up out the door that wanted to talk to me about how to ask for a raise or how to get to the team to listen or, and I was like, how can I just do this for a living all day? Right. And it took me
yes,
years to figure out that like, that's something you can do and get paid well for that because I still got to feed my kids. I have a kid in college. Like
right,
the money still has to go into the household,
right.
but I can be really happy doing that. And I think I'd love to know, do you find for your clients too, is there a leap of faith that the weekends or the night, is that going to be enough? Do they have questions like that for you? I'd love to know what that process is like.
They do. And we go back to that scarcity conversation, right?
Mm,
So if, sometimes the pendulum just can't swing all the way in. It's like, okay, I love it.
yeah.
It's what lights me up. Therefore, I'm going to quit my job and hang a shingle and they will come. Because then we're in this
Yeah.
place of, anytime I need a client, I am not attractive to that client.
Correct.
So I think what we do in the way of motivation, in the way of sort of, okay, is the evenings and the weekends enough? It's like, well, what are you doing to continue to build that so that when you make that transition, it's not a transition of scarcity. It's a transition that I've laid the foundational pieces. I've done things. I've
Mm,
built my visibility and credibility. I've gotten clear about what the heck it is that I want to do so that I can speak about it in a way that's confident
yeah.
and magnetic, and that that it's not all about have to, but really like it's what I want to. It's what I know I can give, and I know the kinds of results I get. But even for the corporate clients that I work with, right?
Mm,
Like who might be thinking about, can I go for that next promotion? Can I go for that next thing? And because don't we all kind of
hmm.
take that big gulp and like, am I the right person or do I have what it takes? So I think that kind of goes into that confidence piece, which is a huge piece of motivation.
Yeah.
Like, okay, maybe I recognize that I want to do it. Maybe it's really important to me, but am I confident that I can do that? Like any of those three areas are the areas that undermine our motivation.
Mm,
So then the confidence thing is, well, what can I tap into? Because I believe, and anybody who's listening, I believe that there are things that you've done to knock things out of the park that you've completely forgotten about,
oh,
that you
yes.
completely don't give yourself credit for anymore. You
Mm,
get all caught in the weeds of what you're trying to do at this moment and comparing yourself to others and coming up at the short end of the stick because of the way that you're looking at it. And if you would tap into some of those things that you've done, and not
mm,
even necessarily for the exact thing that you're doing now, but things that you've done even when you haven't felt 100% confident about it, or you've done when you were facing opposition
mm,
and other people didn't think you could do it, but you did it anyway. Like it's tapping into we all have a treasure trove of things that we've done, places we've
yes.
gone, people, and we have like thought, darn, I didn't know I could do that. And then immediately forget about it because
Hmm.
something else feels overwhelming or too big or whatever. I'm going to challenge everybody listening to like take an hour someday with a cup of tea or a margarita, whatever it is that you do, and just begin to like, when have can I say kick ass on your
Yeah, you can.
podcast? When have I kicked ass and forgotten about it or not given myself credit? And it can be this big, it doesn't have to be that I like solved world peace because
Right.
we're all working on it.
Right.
What are your successes that you have completely covered up with your, we all have our insecurities.
Hmm.
We all have I wish I could have done this, I could have done, but what did you do? I mean,
Yes.
like seriously, begin, whether it's a journal, whether it's an electronic, whatever you do to capture your stuff. I
Mhm.
don't know about you, Sarah, but I love writing things out,
I have
like
to. I just do. Because
writing them out.
I just found out like over the last year, I'm what's called a highly sensitive. Did not know this about myself, but my nervous system reacts to the world very like on
Hmm.
its own. So I'm like, hi. Stop that. Anyway, but
Yeah.
one of the best ways to help regulate that is writing. And I have always found that writing by hand is more effective. And I think for this exercise, I'm going to push the
Hmm.
listeners to do it by hand. I
Yeah.
just think watching your hand document what you've done
Yes.
that took
And find
courage and
something
guts. Yeah.
either pretty or handsome or whatever to write it in. Like,
Hmm.
find something that is worthy of your words to capture it
I
in.
love it.
And then begin to give yourself credit for the things that you've done. And then with that treasure trove that you and capture every time, get into the habit of like, "Ooh, I just had a success and I'm going to give it its worth by writing it down."
I
And
love
then
that.
when you're facing an obstacle, look in your treasure trove and be like, this, what were the things I was, and this is what I want you to think about. What was I thinking about at the time?
Mm.
What was I telling myself? What was I experiencing in the way of bodily reactions? What were other people saying to me, or how were they engaging with me? So, how was I impacting other people at that moment? What, so, thinking, feeling, doing at that time of success. Capture those things because those things are things that you're like, "Ah, I was thinking that way then, but I'm thinking this way now." Remember, so one of my favorite quotes of all time, I'm completely like, Sarah's like, "Where are
No,
you
I'm with you
going?"
100%. I think everybody else is too. We're like, yes, tell us the quote. Yes.
So, Dr. David Burns, who is the author of the Feeling Good Handbook, which is all
Mhm.
about cognitive distortions and cognitive thinking. He says, you feel the way you do right now because of the things you're thinking at this moment. So if you think about that, I don't like the way I'm feeling. Maybe I need to change the things I'm thinking.
Oh,
So if
I
we go
love
back
that.
to what I was just saying, when we can tap into the things we're thinking when we're successful, chances are when we're not feeling successful, when we're feeling up against an obstacle, we're thinking things that are not success thoughts. So tap into those success thoughts that you had when you're in a place of trying to overcome a mountain or achieve something. That's how come I want you to have this success
Yeah.
journal, this time where you've captured what was I thinking, what was I feeling, what was I doing in moments of success, so that when you're up against the wall or you're feeling like, can I do this thing? What does my success journal tell me?
Oh, I love it. I love it. What you're reminding me of as you're sharing that is the confidence competence loop that Brennan Burchard talks about often, but I think it's a psychological phenomenon, like a general one, right? Like the more confident we feel, the more competent. And then we'll try more things and then our confidence grows. And then, in that loop, and I love what you're saying about putting this in something that's beautiful because it actually honors all of the courage, right? And all of the times you did something hard. I really, really love that. And for anyone listening, I'm feeling the urge to add anytime you've had a really difficult conversation that you were scared to have and you did it, because one of my big philosophies, my big beliefs is that your best life is one 10-minute sweaty conversation away. And I
Oh,
really
love that.
believe that. So anytime you've had that conversation, be it a boss, a romantic partner, a friend, your children, your family, your community, that you took the time to be brave enough to do that. I think it's really important to put that as, because we talk about all the things you forget, right, Meg? Like
Right.
that's something people can forget really quickly and they're scary. It's
They're
scary.
scary.
Yeah.
And it is like a good on me. I faced the fear, I faced the discomfort, and probably have two people better off because of it.
Every time. Literally. I mean,
Mhm.
don't people wanna know the truth? We all wanna know the truth even when it's
Right.
hard. We'd rather deal with reality than be in a pretend world, right?
Even
Yeah.
if immediately out of the gate you're not getting that response from that person, ultimately you're doing both of you a service.
Yes. Every time. Every time. Now that we've talked about the success journal, we've talked about internal and external factors, having that sort of vibe together and figuring out where that is. Yes, we all need to eat and we can love the work we do. And inside of that, there's another thread that I know you're really good at. And you touched about it a little bit when we were talking in the beginning, but that's ambivalence. What does ambivalence tell us? And when does it tend to come into our lives? Like at what moments does I call it getting the F-its, except I don't call it F, but getting the F-its. Like when does this come in? Why does this happen?
Let's start with the fact that ambivalence is a natural part of change. So, when in fact we can normalize something, it
Mm,
sort of takes some of the power away from it. Because if I am, whether it's I want to lose 10 pounds, but I love chocolate cake, it's that I want to, but that comes into every change thing that we do. And it doesn't, I mean, if anybody's listening and thinking, oh, but this is a positive change, this is something that I know is going to bring me all sorts of joy, so why should it be hard? It's not going to be hard. It's going to be easy. I'm sorry. Any change. Anytime that we are leaning into doing something differently,
mm,
we're going to have I want to but. And it's that but this is more comfortable, or this is just my routine, or this is, it's change doesn't tend to be something we just flow into like, oh, this is just so enlightening and beautiful. And it's no, I mean, change, it requires us to think harder about things, to break
mhm,
out of habit, to break out of routine. And so where I would start with anybody is let's normalize it, because
mm,
once we normalize it, when it knocks at your door, you can be like, oh, but Meg said that being ambivalent about things is a natural part of change. So I can just like get it. It's natural. And what am I going to do to counter it?
mm,
So I'm going to acknowledge it. Okay, I recognize that that ambivalence is raising its head, that I said I was going to lose these 10 pounds and go to the gym 3 times a week at 5 o'clock in the morning, but today it's rainy and cold. And so I get that I'm feeling ambivalent about that. I get that it's not an easy thing to do.
mhm,
So I've got a choice, because isn't life all about choices? I mean, it's all about, so I'm going to make a choice. Do I continue with the change that I said was important, or am I doing something else? And if I do something else, what's the cost of that? If
mhm.
I, so it's always about like, there's no police that are going to come, like, I mean, there are police and they are going to, but there's no change police. It's
Mhm,
about you. So what are the benefits of the change? So when we're feeling ambivalent, what are the advantages of the change? Maybe we need to lean back into what was the reason why I wanted to do this to begin with?
mm,
Because
mm,
maybe we're 4 months down the road and those advantages of change are feeling a little more distant. So what are the benefits?
mhm,
What are the costs of not doing it? Because maybe once again, we're 4 months down the road and those costs are not as in our face as they were 4 months ago.
yeah,
And then, like, once again, what does my success journey tell me? What are the things that I know I can do?
mm,
And maybe my ambivalence has pulled me away from that. So, do I tap back into what are the things that I can be optimistic about my ability to do
mm,
and my intention? So, how do I tap back into my intention? Because ambivalence is part of being a human being. It's the other side of the coin of change. So, like, I have yet, Sarah, beating up on work well
has
for
it
you?
ever been effective for anyone? No, it has not, and it's the ego's job. I always tell people that, like,
Right,
if you're alive, it's gonna happen. You just have to learn over time to not pay attention to it.
right.
It's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
make a different choice.
Yeah, but it's not gonna make a difference. It's an automatic response system built into our
Mhm.
brains because it hasn't quite evolved with us, right? And so,
Right.
yeah, and I think it can really mess us up, and I really love what you're saying because it never works. We think
Mm-mm.
it will, like, we're still 5 if you don't eat your dinner, right? It's like,
Right.
nah, that's not
Right.
how real life works. I really love the idea of pulling on the success journal in that moment as well,
Right.
but also the space and grace you're giving us in those moments of, 1, it's totally normal. There's nothing wrong with
Right.
you. You're not a failure. You're not, "Oh, here I go again." Like those things we
Right.
can all say, right?
Exactly.
It's
Right.
like, "No,
Oh,
no, no,
I'm
this is
such a
part of
loser.
it."
I bet nobody else ever has automatic negative thoughts running through their brain, those little ants. I
Never.
love that automatic negative thoughts are known as ants.
Me too.
And think about those little nasty ants. Have you ever had an ant infestation in your house or any, they're just like,
They're disgusting.
they're
Yeah, and they
disgusting.
get
And we
everywhere.
all have them
Yes.
marching through our brains. Do 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 do. So we just acknowledge, oh, there they are, and I'm gonna get an exterminator.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep doing what I said I was gonna do.
Yeah,
You're reminding me too of a phrase I haven't used in a long time, but this whole conversation about ambivalence has reminded me that one of the things we can say in that moment of choice is my commitment is bigger than my feelings. And there's times I don't love that because it's like, can we stop with the hustle? Like sometimes your feelings are telling you something important.
right.
But I think what you're asking when you said things like, but when I started this, can I get back in touch with that? And I think it's the same idea, but there's a
Mhm.
gentleness to what you're saying, Meg, that I really like. And I think, as I'm constantly bucking the white patriarchy, you're welcome, world. One of the things I always say is, let's kill this hustle stuff like this. You're
Mhm.
going to get up. Like that's part of
Yeah.
that attack that can happen. And I really like what you're saying. I like it better than my commitment is bigger than my emotions because it's a little bit more gentle. It provides a little bit more space to just get reconnected to our intentions.
Well, and not beat ourselves up to say, oh, I'm a human being. I might feel some ambivalence. So what can I
Mm.
tap back into to help me? And this is the other thing, and but sometimes our priorities change.
Yes.
Sometimes our goals change. Sometimes now that's not to give like license to I'm just never going to follow through with anything or nothing. I mean, I really encourage you to think about what are your priorities and what are the things that are important to you, but also that sometimes things change.
Mhm.
Sometimes things change, and we need to tweak to stay back into that, what are the advantages of this change for me, or what's going on what are the disadvantages of staying in the same place,
Mhm.
but maybe things tweak just a little bit and go
Yeah.
down a different path, and that doesn't make you a bad person, but just be tuned into what's happening for you.
Yeah. And that again, I love what you're saying. It doesn't make you a failure. It doesn't mean anything's wrong. And I love what you said about normalizing too. So good. Okay, so we could talk for about another 3 hours, I bet. So what I'd
Oh,
like to
maybe
do
3 days. Yeah.
okay, sure. We'll do it. We'll do a whole make Sarah 3 hour, 3 day show. But for everybody listening, I understand you have a gift for the girlfriends who have tuned in today. Can you share with us what that is?
Yes. I want all of us to understand that ambivalence is normal. We hit little obstacles in the road. So I want to give you a guide to overcome ambivalence and thrive, because we want to acknowledge it, but we still want to jump that fence, right? So it's called Clarity and Triumph. Banish your doubts and embrace your own success journey. And so there is, so it's basically kind of putting together what I know about ambivalence, motivation, and just giving you a little bit of a guide to walk through yourself, fill some things in to feel connected to your own motivation and jump those fences and create those intentions.
I love it. I love it. All right, you guys, please go grab that because anytime we can get more clear, and I love clarity and triumph. Like, how do we not love this title? But anytime we can get more clear, our brains work better. It knows what to focus on. It knows where to go, and that alone can increase motivation, right, Mike?
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I totally get that even clarity is a journey. So it's not like until you're clear, don't do anything. That's not what it is, but it's like a guide to kind of help you. What is that clarity? And it's going to be
Mm.
different for each person. And that is also an evolution. I mean,
Ah,
think about where I was as a 13-year-old thinking about I want to work with these adolescents to not be runaways, but let's create healthier work environments that create healthier home environments. I mean, like it all works together, but it's
does.
all this journey.
I'm glad you brought that home because we could have a whole podcast episode on the 13-year-old Meg because that was amazing. But it really is interesting to see if we can help the adults, we can help the kids, and all of it's important, right? But there is a
Right.
chain reaction here and where people get called to step in on the chain, right? Like some people want to help the kids, some people want to help the parents, some people want the environment, some people want work. but to be really focused in on how we can leave the world a better place. That is definitely at the heart of your work, Meg. And I'm so grateful
It
that you
is.
are doing the work you do. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we're wrapping up, but can I say
Yeah.
one more thing to just kind of bring
Always.
home that very point that you just said? So, one of the huge things that I do is I go into organizations and I help their leaders use coaching tools to be better leaders. But this is what happens time after time after time. I usually do, I train for 2 or 3 days back to back. And so I give tools that first day, and then they come back. The leaders come back the next day and they say, "You changed the way I parented last night. You changed the way that I talked to my kids. And it impacted the way that my kids listen to what I have to say. And I feel like I'm a better parent after one day." And I think to myself, Hallelujah. We're like helping kids by their parents engaging with them differently, which brings me all the way back to my 13-year-old self. So I just had to share that based
I was
upon
just
what
gonna
you
say
just said.
13-year-old Meg must die. Everything like with
Yes.
excitement every time you hear that because you're fulfilling on your whole life's journey there. Like
Yeah.
really all of the tools that you've learned throughout your life because of that day reading in the parade, right? About
Right.
those children. It's just incredible work, Meg. Thank you. And just real quickly, if someone's like, I need me some more Meg, where do you hang out online?
So online, either LinkedIn, Meg Rentschler. My biggest place to connect with me is starcoachshow.com. That's where I have oodles of resources where you can contact with me, connect with me. That's my happy place because that's where we are talking about the power of communication and the way that we show up and the way that we listen changes the way that we're all on this earth together, which is my key thing. Let's be connected. Let's listen to one another. Let's be curious about what other people have to offer.
I love it. I love it. All right, you guys, we will have links to all of that beneath this video if you're watching on YouTube or in the show notes if you're listening. And Meg, thank you so much for hanging out with the girlfriends today.
Sarah, thank you for making my day.